Hi, welcome to grantfundsale.com, where we're passionate about building confidence through education. Today we have the privilege of interviewing Blair Taberer, who is an entrepreneur of note. I hope you enjoy the interview. Blair Taberer, welcome to grantfundsale.com. How's things going?
She's there good. Hey, how's everything with the blog?
Going well.
That's
very
so
good, thanks.
I'm very proud of you. It's good. We've been matched for a while, and I think I've seen the last few months is just going to be really awesome. And I think the blog is just such a great thing. And I just want to say thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks.
I hope I can contribute something. I hope it's fairly interesting.
Of course you can. You always got something to contribute.
Okay.
Cool. So tell us about your childhood.
Geez, growing up. Well, I don't think I've quite grown up yet.
Yeah.
Give you a little bit of background.
Can definitely vouch for that one.
Growing up in Zim was interesting. I think it was a fun as well as a sort of a very relaxed vibe. Zim in the sort of the 80s, 90s was a time where you sort of you were almost experimental in the industrial sort of session of British colonialists and all that, and my dad being quite a successful tobacco farmer and all that stuff made it very interesting being a child there. But my memories are very sort of marginal of Zim at that time. It was more the schooling career, and then pre the move to England, so it was nice to actually consider Zim as a sort of a second home. But we've moved on from then, fully South African now. So growing up was very flexible, very relaxed kind of lifestyle. That's what I remember.
Okay, awesome, bro. And about your move to London, how was that? How did you guys experience that?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, look, it was inevitable. I think after my dad had some clear insight as to what was going to happen with the economy, I think it was a wise move. It was a fairly difficult transition for him. I think you're always torn in business between keeping the emotional side out of the sort of strategic, systematic side. And I think for him, just being a business mind as he was, it was obviously a lot of collateral that you're gonna lose friends, you're gonna lose family. But it was those 4 years in England were tough for us as kids. It's a very different climate, it's a very different culture to living in Zim. But we knew that we could always go back to Cape Town, where he had invested in the wine estate and the wine farm at any stage. So we knew it was more of a temporary 4 years, a bit of a sort of exiting the third world into primitive sort of culture and experiencing a bit of the first world sort of country and seeing what it was like. And we became very, very pommy, very white, and I had to spend about 14 hours a day in the sun just to get the tan back. So tried my best, but
okay, cool, man. And those years, I mean, you were quite young when you were in London, but did you find that played quite a big role in changing your mindset?
Not so much. The only thing that I learned is that I just never wanted to live in London. Too grey.
Beans and myself were in London now, and we felt exactly the same thing. As nice as free flowing and how everything works there, it's just not a place.
That's it. Hey, it's got all the gimmicks and all the surface level stuff. But at the end of the day, if you can't have a group of friends go out and have a good dinner and a good meal and a good chat, which I mean, London it definitely suits some. But I'm in a very fortunate, blessed position to say, well, I don't have to make that my home, and I really enjoy the sort of the culture and the demographic of South Africa, so I enjoy it. I got friends like you guys, so we can have copious bottles of wine on a Friday night.
Oh, definitely, that's for sure. So for young guys that are thinking about the different avenues of maybe exploring, going overseas and that sort of stuff, would you recommend that to broaden horizons, or would you say, listen, it's not really worth your while?
I'd certainly recommend it. I think it's very important to find yourself, find your independence going overseas, do something you love. I wouldn't say that's the primary bit of advice I'd give to someone, to say, look, as your transition from being a juvenile to an adult, actually I can't give much advice on that yet, but my advice...
We're getting there slowly, maybe 10 years time.
No, bro, I'd say when I'm 75 we can redo my 21st.
Okay, cool.
But I would say that it's going overseas is secondary to doing something you love. Do something you enjoy first of all, find that, and then travel.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. So with yourself, tell us more about what you love doing and how you came about finding that passion.
It's a relative question. I think finding out what you love doing is a journey. People write books about it, people write songs about it, poetry, literature. Everyone's trying to evaluate the dream, evaluate where your source of happiness comes from. And I was thinking about it on the way here, you know, that there's that movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, and actually I had read the book as well. But is happiness monetary? Is it success orientated? Is it love orientated?
Yeah.
There's this combination of emotions that basically attribute to happiness, and I think it's all relative. It's all, there's no one can ever tell you that you're right or wrong to think that that's necessarily happiness. But in my life, certainly finding happiness, finding joy out of the simple things is working out what happiness is and separating it from what hasn't made you happy.
Yeah.
And you have to go through stuff that doesn't make you happy. And in order to reap success, you have to go through struggles. You have to go through things that make it hard. And I think when you can, one day if you sort of old and grey giving advice to your grandkids and say, I've explored the spectrum of happiness and you know, the trial and tribulations, then sure, you're equipped to give advice on that. I can honestly say, in the most sort of in a non, hopefully a way that's not very sort of posing too much advice, acting as though I know everything. But the only thing I can say is that when you do start understanding what brings you happiness, make sure that you never forget how you, because people lose the root. You know, the roots of it are, people can be happy for short terms, but to be happy for the long run is very different to being happy in the short run. And that's a small bit of advice I guess I can give.
And I think from your perspective, I mean, I've known you for quite a while now, and we hang out a lot. But the one thing that you've really got down is the fact that you've established your true sense of riches. And I mean, riches in so many people's minds are so many different things. Some people will be big cars, big houses, or whatever the case, but you've established your identity and riches.
Sure. I mean, again, it's the question of relativity. Look, having nice stuff is great. I mean, it is, but does it make you happy? Then you've got to start working out your source of the happiness and working out what it's all relative to. And I just think that I'm almost too privileged to be able to give an opinion of that. I haven't had to struggle like other people, but what I have had to do is realize the value of working hard. Yeah, it's just realizing the value of like what's important. And I think, you know, blending the creative side and the commercial side for me is something that you've got to do what you are. I think in life you have to realize two things. You have to be able to make money, and you also have to be able to give money away, or not necessarily money, but you have to add something and you have to take something. And sometimes those two aren't proportional, sometimes they are. Sometimes the world is, you're gaining from it what you put in. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just an endless struggle. That no human being can ever tell you. Like, that's what you put in is what you're going to get out. There's no book, there's no thesis or opinion that can ever tell you that. Sometimes you get more out of life, sometimes you're given more. But I can promise you the one thing that I've learned is that to whom much is given, much is required. If you're given a lot, you're going to be required to do a lot. And if you can regulate that kind of thing in your mind, I think like it gives you a good sort of foundation, a good principle to say, right, once I've like worked through those things and those struggles of working out what I've got and what I can do with, then you can start saying, okay, these are the people in my life that I can, one, trust and can help me build this up, and then finding the people to help and give it away, that's easy. There's always going to be people in need.
Okay, which is cool. I mean, and you've done that pretty well.
Yeah, I think the charitable side of life is, it's a side that I think you can't just wake up one morning and say, right, this is what I want to, whose lives I want to change. You got to go, you got to feel it. It's more of it's pretty much like having not that I know what it's like, but grooming like having a baby, like working out, like what the intimacy that you have. It's the same as like, having a business. There's the very similar stages of development to the brain. There's the baby stage, the baby step stages. It's like, let's get everything in order. Let's try and teach this baby. Let's try and put the principles in the business that are going to work later in life. And you'll see those rewards when the fruits always going to show at the end of the day if you put in the effort. So, yeah, I mean, that's...
And that's what I think I've appreciated about you the most, is the fact
Thank
that
you. Thanks,
don't,
Grant.
the fact that you don't just take things at surface level. You always like really
100%,
go
yeah.
into the psychology behind it and really like dwell or dive right into the deep end of stuff.
100%.
And how do you think that's come about? Like, where did you get that philosophy from? And
I think it can be a good or a bad thing. I think being analytical can be difficult, or it can become an obsessive compulsive disorder. I think knowing that everybody has flaws and everybody has strengths is, I have to keep reminding myself of that every single day. I think that one of the things I find one of my strengths and it's good to acknowledge your strengths, is I read people relatively well. I've had to assume that role from growing up being the oldest child, accepting that responsibility and perfection are quite orientated when you're sort of thrown in the deep end quite a lot, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. But reading people is one of these things that has been a skill that you acquire over time. Some people are good at it. Some people are just innately trusting. I feel like, I mean, Warren Buffett always said you should never expect an expensive gift from a cheap person. I think it's a very valid point, is that there's certain elements of people, for instance, honesty is a huge attribute that I find that I'll never try and hang around with too many people who are dishonest, because always don't be surprised if someone who's dishonest tells you a lie. Don't be surprised about it. Don't say, "Oh, but I should have known." No, just realize that that's the fruit, and don't expect an expensive gift. You're going to get disappointed. And you're your own. You're the best critic in your own world. Yeah. You're always going to be your best critic.
And worst critic. Yeah.
Well, you always, it's like, okay, thanks for your advice, but in my opinion, I'm XX. So it's like, I mean, yeah. Like Warren Buffett said, never expect an expensive gift from a cheap person.
That's quite a good saying. I really like that.
Yeah.
So tell us about more about your dad. I mean, many people know about Tony Taberer, the late Tony Taberer, and I was fortunate enough to have some mentoring from him on my side, on a personal level. And those moments of life I will cherish until the day I die, because they were so special.
Yeah.
But tell us more about him from a father perspective, and then also maybe a businessman mentoring perspective.
Initially, I mean, it's difficult when you lose someone who is at the helm of a family. But the only thing I really want to say is that the person that you learn the most about after they're gone is generally the person you learned the most about when they were alive. Yeah. And I think certainly from my dad, I learned a lot about him after he was gone, because I only realized that I learned the most from him when he was alive. Yeah. And there's some people that...
And it's sad how we do that, actually, where we actually totally neglect those people when they're alive, and then eventually when they're not there, we actually appreciate how much they actually impart in our lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a little bit like oxygen. It's like oxygen's free and you're dependent on it, and you only realize how much you need it when it's not there. But with respect to my dad, he was a person that many people learned off, and I was constantly getting sort of almost bombarded, but not in a disrespectful way. It was like, yep, that's my dad, he's amazing, and then all of a sudden it's like he's gone, and then you're like, but hold on, like, why did, maybe it was because you're sort of oblivious to those things when you're growing up. But reading his book that he left behind, a book called Faith, Vision and Courage, about his biography, about growing up in Zim, about...
I've got a copy of it, it's brilliant.
It's a great book, and it was a great book for me because I learned so much about this guy who taught me so much when I was growing up, but things that are completely different end of the spectrum. So that's what I can say about my dad. It's very difficult to express in words the amount of emotion that obviously not having him around to guide you when you're sort of 23, 24, when you're making some of your biggest decisions in life. But I know that his spirit will be, live on, and he'll always be sort of like at the back of my head, and there'll always be this little like voice saying, like keep yourself in check kind of thing, and that's just his nature, and the stronger your character, the more it imparts that kind of subconscious voice in the back of your head. So
yeah, I think your dad will definitely, he's left a legacy for many generations.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can see it with the wine farm that my brothers are now involved with. That was my first job, sort of coming back from Australia, getting involved there. It was certainly was it was a challenge. Things change quickly. Legacy it's nice to leave a legacy. It's very naive to think that a legacy won't change. A legacy isn't a set of standards and principles. That a legacy is almost like this never-ending book. It's as interesting as it is to start off with, it's never going to be the same, but you're hoping that the end point will always be this. Whenever you start writing the chapter, you're always going to say, well, I hope that the end will be that. And yeah, that's the goal. And so the goal should be similar for each generation, but the chapters are never going to be the same.
It's always going to be different. Okay, cool. And then obviously with your dad passing, you unexpectedly got thrown into the deep end and running this massive empire. And you did it so successfully. How did you, in those times, how did you get that right?
You make it sound sort of a lot more heroic than it really was. There was an element of sort of again, there was a legacy that was expected, but it certainly wasn't a glamorous activity. It was ingrained in our lives. It was something that I loved, and I still hold very close to me is the farm. I think that the people there made it extremely easy to work with, the management, as well as something that I remember as a family. It gave us a lot of joy to be able to be part of something that wasn't necessarily a viable commercial activity or a viable productive from productive capacity. It was a lifestyle, and for that kind of thing, you never can take that for granted. That's something that's a gift, I think at the moment, at that stage, when I was thrown into the deep end, the proverbial deep end as it was, it wasn't necessarily something that came out of the blue. I'd been working for my dad for about 5 months after I'd graduated from UWA, and I knew that there were certain things that were expected of me to fit that role, and there were certain expectations that had already been sort of that I'd premeditated, being the oldest son. So a lot of it came naturally, but with that came a lot of mistakes that you make. 24 is a dangerous age. It's a dangerous age because when you're 18, you know everything, and then when you're 21, you know everything, and you know more than you did when you were 18, and then when you're 23, you know way more than you knew at 23, so you know everything plus more than you did at 23 and 18. And then when you kind of hit your sort of mid-20s, life throws you a curveball, and you go, hold on a minute, like I got to pay levies.
And you have to pay like bonds and cars off or whatever the stuff,
Yeah,
okay.
So.
Cool, man. And then with Aventurin Estate, obviously it's like main two incomes flows are the horses and the wines. What was your favorite on the farm?
I didn't have a favorite. I think that in terms of a marketing strategy, we attempted, and I think successfully attempted, to synergize both of them so that they complement each other. I think the one complements the other very well. It's not, it's a little bit like strawberries and cream. Very different components. One is a fruit, one is dairy, but horses and wine, probably different ends of anything that you can think of. But we tried to, everything in life needs a comparative advantage. I just think that was the way. That was what my dad envisioned. It was more of what he enjoyed doing was, racing horses. From as early as my memories of him were going to Mashonaland Turf Club in Zimbabwe and Highlands, watching horses run there. And as we all know, like horses is the sort of the sport of kings. So it wasn't any mystery that there was this like level of affluence in the new British colonial era in Zim that we were all a part of. And my dad certainly enjoyed sort of enveloping. But in terms of coming to Cape Town and experiencing a thoroughbred farm as well as a wine facility, it certainly posed this great synergetic sort of
combination.
it was easy to put the two together. It wasn't any mystery that they could potentially be a good marketing combo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I don't have a preference. I
You
think
don't have a preference.
it's more from a.
So what about the horse racing? How do you dwell in that at all?
Yeah. I mean, I've been training to be a jockey now for 14 years.
Well, I can definitely see that. You've lost a lot of weight from the bodybuilding days.
Yeah, the bodybuilding days. Unfortunately, the horses still don't quite agree with me when I try and get on them. Most of the time.
Thoroughbred racing horses.
No, they don't enjoy it very much. I can't understand why.
I don't know. I wouldn't understand it.
No,
myself.
they start chewing that thing in their mouth.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So one of your hobbies is obviously playing golf, right? And you guys had a golf estate up in Zim, in where was it? Matari, Vumba?
It was the Vumba Mountains just outside Matari,
called Leopard Rock.
Mm.
So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think you've been there once or twice.
I had the privilege, of being able to go there.
Leopard Rock holds a very special place in my heart. I think it was quite a difficult place to develop a golf course because the mountains there are notorious for being a little bit sort of jungly, a little bit sort of
wild.
Yeah, and this is sort of ambient rainforest kind of environment. But my dad teamed up with one of the most successful golf course directors and designers in the world, Peter Makovich, and they designed this 5-star sort of golf course. And again, I was probably a bit young to sort of really appreciate it, but now it was where my dad passed away. It was where our family sort of collectively came together, and it was a little bit of a sort of a spiritual experience, that holiday. But from that, definitely forever I'll consider it one of the most special places in my heart.
Awesome, man. Cool. And then moving on to, let's go 8 years back to Chill Beverages. So how did you get involved there? I mean, it's a massive beverage company at the moment, and I know you've sold out there, but how did you come to founding that?
Again, I think it was something that sort of found me. My dad was approached by a guy who was looking just at sort of bottling water at the time. One thing led to another, and I teamed up with a guy called Grant Hobbs and Aiden Greff, who actually tragically passed away in a motorbike accident a few years ago. But I think I learned a lot. I mean, there's things I'll learn from that, and there's things I won't do again. For instance, another one of Warren Buffett's sort of quotes is, "Don't test the depth of the water with both feet." I think I said.
Quite true.
Yeah, I certainly won't do that again. I think when it comes to starting your first business, know that if you're expecting to live the high life without going through those baby steps, those small, the 3 days in a row where you don't go without sleep, you're very much mistaken. It's exactly like having an infant. You got to nurse that thing more in the beginning. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is, and it's one of these cliches that I get so frustrated when people are like, do the small things well, because if you do really well with the small things, then you'll do great with the big things. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, that's a bunch of rubbish. Like, do the small things well, because you're going to have to do them for the rest of your life. Yeah. And then if you have time, you'll be able to do the big things when you found people to manage the small things effectively. And that requires a whole bunch of anomalies and variables that you got to trust people, you've got to groom people. So, find good managers, find people that you trust, and I mean, there's no, again, it's not about writing sort of a sequence of events and how to make a great business. It's just learn from your mistakes, don't do them again, and know that you're going to have to manage people, and it's going to be a pain in the ass sometimes.
So what was the highlight for Chill for you?
What did Warren Buffett say? The best day is the day you sell your business. The two best days of a business is the day you start and the day you get out. Those were the highlights. I learned a lot. I found really good. I made good relationships. I made good relationships with good industrial leaders in beverage sort of space, where you find in niche markets that a lot of the big corporates dabble in the gaps. So, for instance, Distell there's similar sort of minds that on the board of directors, Distell that are on the board of director of, PSG, for instance. I think trying to be as versatile as you can is where I found myself. I'm not a computer genius, for instance. I love sitting on a computer, but I'm not a computer genius. And you got to recognize those kind of things. You got to recognize the attributes that aren't necessarily your strengths. I'm definitely not a very good curry eater. I tend to stray away from a very hot chili. It's something that I don't enjoy, and two, I don't do well. It doesn't sit well with me, and I recognize that. It's the same in business. Don't do the stuff that you're not good at, and listen to what people say about it. It's like, employ the most employable people in that area, and if the budget, the best for that job, and if the budget doesn't allow you to pay them enough, then don't expect them to do the job that the top paid people are going to do. It sounds really silly, but those are the facts. You
get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, and people are also, unless you make them feel incentivized and part of a company, they're not going to do the job that you would probably look. Every job that you probably think that you can do every job better than anyone else can. So don't expect that people are going to spend hours working on something that they're not going to reap a benefit from at the end of the day. It's generally it's sad, but the world is a lot more competitive than it used to be. Therefore, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to be vying for jobs that the top guys, they have a limited lifespan, and no one is indispensable. The only people that are indispensable are your family, and I think at the end of the day, that makes them the most unemployable people in a business. And when they are employable in a business, then don't let them compete with people who are better than. Keep it a family business, like a restaurant. But a corporate environment, I think, the biggest thing I learned there was just to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself in for, and it's 100% about managing people and their problems.
Yeah. So if someone had to approach you again and ask you about entering into some sort of partnership with them or doing a setup, what are the key things that you would look at before you even consider it?
I think one of the most important characteristics in a human is humility. I love people who are humble. I'm not advocating that I'm the most humble person. I enjoy hanging out with people who are humble, that don't think that they've got it all worked out. I enjoy people who are honest, but I don't necessarily think getting involved in a business is like having a love affair. You don't have to know people intimately in order to get in business with them. You do need to know the market. You do need to do your due diligences. You need to go through the most intensive research due diligence process that you can before you even think about going. Don't just read the newspaper and see Eskom is in a state. Cool, I'm going to open up a plant. Understand that every single business enterprise industry that there is has its quirks, has its pros and its cons. And if someone tells you that it doesn't, then they're either lying or they haven't done their research properly. Because the chances are, if someone's not doing it already before you, there's a good reason that there's a catch-22 somewhere involved there. Don't look for the thing that's going to give you the highest return. Look for the things that are giving good returns and innovate on them. I'm not saying go and start another Apple and just call it tomato. You know, go and be prepared to work hard, be prepared to, and one of the other sayings I enjoy is leave the creating to the guys who are creative. Leave the innovating to the genius minds that come from Harvard, and be prepared to pay them. You know, I go back to the thing, and it sounds very surface level, but if you want the best ideas, pay the people who are the most innovative. And latch onto an idea, do your due diligence, ask your mentors and the people around you, and when you really get that feeling and it's surpassed all your expectations, then start with phase one, which would be, you know, finding good partners in the business, make sure that you've got your funding and gearing regulations all set out, and enjoy the journey. Make sure you can wake up every morning and be excited to do it.
Yeah, the one thing I think I've learned a lot from you is one or two ventures that we've gone into together is just that whole process of, before you do anything, get your due diligence right and make sure you are on track to see if it's even worth your time. And I suppose in both cases that we've done stuff, we've actually done the research and we've actually come out and said, you know what, it's not worth our time. And it saved us quite a bit of money doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people today just get these massive ideas and they just run with them, and before you know it, it's like just a complete waste of money.
Yeah, sure. Never forget, time is money. So don't always manage your time. Manage the amount of time you put in, because as quickly as you get irritated with people who spend liberally, you get irritated with people who waste time liberally. And I think information is accessible. It's more accessible than it's ever been. It's at the click of a button. Use information. Use people who are good at collecting information. I'm not a good information collector. You know, the same that I'm not a good curry eater. I'm the same as I'm not a good information collector. Get guys who can collect data, put it together, and the few sort of the little quirky things that I've done on the side that haven't necessarily worked out, I've always maintained that it's really important to make sure that you learn as much from those, no matter how small and sort of how much you think that they're not going to impact your life, how much you don't think that there's necessarily going to change the world. There's always little things that you'll learn from everybody, and I'm not sure if it was Gandhi or someone said that if you can remember one thing a day from someone, just remember one, like learn something from someone every day, you will have enough information over that could provide resources for the world. So I've tried to maintain it, and our lives get too busy for that. But you know, that's another thing that I'm trying to make sure that you always ears and eyes are open, waiting for opportunities and listening and absorbing knowledge.
Sensitive to what's going on around you. Okay, now tell us a little bit about the documentary on you and the hustler in the concrete jungle.
Oh, no, these guys rocked on my door, and I'm pretty sure they thought I was a rapper from NYC. And I was like, sorry, I'm not a hustler, but to be honest with you, it was again, it's you know, it's amazing when people are like, well, we'd love to interview you, and you know, so it was very similar to sort of like giving them my background, giving them what I'm enthusiastic about at this stage of my life. I'm really getting into the heart of the music industry, trying to write songs that sort of impact people, and we can change. You know, that's not just going to be surface level kind of stuff. But I think that was what the documentary was more orientated towards. It wasn't necessarily I don't know, it was for a TV show called Kwai City, and I don't know, it was a good fit, but I'm still pretty convinced they thought I was a rapper, and I got very disappointed I wasn't.
That's so funny. So tell us a little bit more about B-Tape's music and how that came about. Where did your music career start, or where did music start?
Music career started when I was playing rugby. I damaged my ACL ligament. I had to have an operation, and I was lying on my back for about 3 months. And I had a very good friend in university called Richard Wild, and I'm forever grateful for him, because I think due to his absolute inability to take one more day of my complaining, because I'm arguably the most OCD person you'll ever meet. I just couldn't take lying on my back for another second. He just tried to keep me quiet by handing me a guitar, and I had no idea about how to play guitar. I love music, don't get me wrong. I mean, I can regurgitate the last 80 rock bands, you know, the 80s, 90s rock bands of the century to you, but playing a guitar was something very foreign to me, and after zillions of hours and countless blisters on fingers and calluses, you know, I sort of just pursued it, and I found it quite, it was quite soothing. It was quite therapeutic to an extent. I never ever thought for a second that I could start a career or be a professional musician. I thought it was too late. I was about 19 when I started playing guitar, and I was about 23 when I started singing. So it came as something very foreign to me. It definitely wasn't in the roots in the family tree or lineage that's been handed down. You know, maybe there was great grandmother who used to sing opera, but I certainly didn't know about them. But my mom still claims that she was in her past life was a professional musician, but I just, judging from her shows done on aisle 16 in the church pews, I tend to disagree. But shout out to old Lindy. But I started music at university when I was a little bit sort of in ail, and I had a knee op. I actually wanted to be a professional rugby player. That sort of the reality hits quite quickly when you're sort of bedbound. But started playing the guitar and started enjoying it, and one thing led to another, and I entered a little talent show, which was pretty comical to say the least. I entered it with Michael, my butt, and he was a lot more musical than I was. He used to play the piano when we first moved to South Africa, when I was back in 2002 and 1995, and when he matriculated in 2002, I remember he started getting quite involved with sort of playing the piano, playing the church bands and whatever. And I used to just have the biggest go at him. I was just like, this is a noise that I can't take. It's resonating down the hallways. So I kind of eat my words a little bit. But Mike actually taught me a lot about music, and about the most important thing about music is the joy that it brings to people when you don't even realize it's there's certain melodies and symphonic resonance that. That's the beauty about music. It's never the same for everybody. Some people enjoy it. Some people. That's why there's so many different genres. So.
Okay, cool. And at the moment, you're gigging quite a bit.
Yeah, it's. I mean, look, it took. I think once I'd sort of dabbled and worked out that I was from the commercial side of life, I decided to take a little bit of a break from the entrepreneurial side. Music was always there, and it's always been a passion. I think that the sort of inner sort of competitive spirit of me wanted to sort of see if I could, like venture into an industry that I know nothing about. See if it worked out, and I think. I'm certainly in the beginning stages. I'm learning every day. I went to Nashville last year this time, recorded a couple of tracks with the producer over there, and it's all part of a learning process. I definitely haven't worked out the industry yet. Otherwise, I think that it's one of the most saturated. It's just a highly competitive industry. There's an overabundance, oversupply of brilliant musicians, and with all due respect to the industry, there's a lot of people who are quite ready to take your money and to use you as a little bit of a pawn, especially artists. Look at your typical American pop stars, between the ages of sort of like 13 to like sort of 18, and it's puts a little bit out of my age bracket, but at the end of the day,
just a little.
Yeah, it's you've got to decide to what extent are you willing to sell your soul to be successful, and I just decided that I'm not willing to negotiate at all on especially the lyrics that I write and the message that I want to send, and I don't know, the general vibe, like the genre that I want to be. It's just, if the industry's only sort of, 500 people that are going to listen to your stuff, then sorry, like that's the stuff I want to write about. People either love it or hate it. Yeah. But yeah.
So that's the reason why you kind of decided to go the route of managing yourself, right?
Look, now we're starting to talk about the intricacies of the music industry, and why taking, for example, like bands that have found success in managing themselves, the 30 Seconds to Marses, the Lady Antebellums, and all those guys who have done the hard route. It's the music industry isn't the same as it was. It's very single orientated. You don't make albums anymore. You don't go to music and buy CDs anymore. You kind of people are making money sort of at home with their own production sort of system. I don't necessarily manage myself. I just put myself on. I find a little bit of a gap in the market for solo performances, and I'm I like to perfect the art. By no means have I even come close to perfecting it, but I provide something that's more entertaining and it's feasible. So is it good to be commercial and creative at the same time? Probably not, because I'm over I overthink everything. I'm over analytical. It's better to be a record label that wants to manage someone who's creative than someone who's commercial that wants to manage themselves being creative, because you're going to be hypercritical of the industry. But look, I enjoy what I do. It is, if you, I've always said in everything, like, if you can find something you can wake up every morning and just keen to do, try and do it. If it doesn't work out and if it's not sustainable, then make it second best. But at the end of the day, I think I'm going to give music quite a go, and so far the reaction, the sort of advice, and the sort of feedback that I've got from my mates, they're probably like being ultra nice, and it's occasionally I just slip them a couple of bottles of wine to say really nice things and post really nice things on Twitter. But they've been super cool, and I think if all my friends knew how I write the song, it's funny how many of them would be like, if I had to tell them the rationale behind the song, they'd be like, "What? You serious? Like, that song's actually about that kind of moment or whatever." They'd laugh, but it's that simple. There's no hidden agendas in songwriting, and it's all about the song. It's all about the song and live performance. So that's the route I'm going, is trying to put on a live performance show. If it turns like, I'm by no means going to be a sort of a U2 concert in Grand Hall, but it's as a single act. Like, people every now and again are like, "Oh, it's pretty cool. He does loops. He infuses like sounds of the guitar with his mic, or blends to some funny noise and whatever."
Brilliant.
Some people enjoy it, some people don't.
Cool. And what about what's some artists that are aspiring you at the moment, or just people what are people that are you looking up to and are really getting you going?
Yeah, I must admit, like, I'm always careful of, like, sort of having icons and like idols that I look up to. I like to learn things from people. I think it's important to have people you can bounce stuff off. I find those people very important. But I must say my friends are not necessarily my people that I'd go to for sort of a life check, but they're the people that I enjoy getting criticism from, because you're a reflection of your friends. Friends are, I mean, this is one of those fridge magnet sayings, but it's friends of the family you choose for yourself. But that saying is very delicate, because you've decided that those people are going to mimic you. They're like a mirror of who you want to be and who you are, and you are who you hang out with. So if at the end of the day you do something and you don't know, and I mean, music is very, it's very much an introspective thing. It's like, oh, what does this song sound like? And then the guy's like, yeah, I don't really like it, whatever. People are a lot more nicer, obviously, because they appreciate you putting a lot of time into it. But someone will be like, oh, that's really cool. Then you're like, okay, cool, let me work with that idea. Look, my dad's always going to be one of those people that I look up to, that I appreciate the amount of effort and what he's done for us. He's really done a lot to give us as much of an opportunity in life as possible. Gandhi, Justin Bieber, Oprah.
Oprah. Okay, cool. So let's finish off with the last question. So what bit of advice do you think you could give to aspiring entrepreneurs out there that you find that has really been beneficial for you?
I would certainly suggest committing to reading the Business Review every single Sunday. And you laugh, but I'm absolutely dead serious. It will change your life when you start realizing about what's going on in the world around you.
Keeping up to date.
Certainly changed mine. A book called The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho wrote, has some very, very good mythological reasoning. It's got these, it shows you how idiosyncratic we are as humans. It shows you how habitual we are in our formations. And honestly, in terms of just like a saying, one of the best sayings I've ever heard is, never invest in anything that eats while you sleep. And I think that's taught me a life lesson. You know, there's a lot of hidden meaning behind that. Yeah. I also have lived by the saying, waste not, want not. I'm telling you now that you will, if you start buying stuff that you don't need, you'll start selling stuff that you thought you needed very soon. And I've learned that lesson. You know, I've sort of one of these sort of analogies that I can use is when you're moving house, you suddenly realize how much rubbish you accumulate as humans. And it's not to say be a hoarder, but my dad always said, like, you don't waste, because waste not one. You'll find that you, more often than not, you need stuff that you never thought you did, and be grateful and mindful. Most of all, I think it's important to understand what happiness is. Understand where your success.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, understand what happiness really is in the roots of it, because it's different for everybody. We're all uniquely made and created, and we're all designed to think differently and to formulate different opinions. And unfortunately, I might get into a bit of trouble but saying this, but the world's pushing us more towards regulated society. We're seeing it more and more in the news today that everything is becoming a basket of goods. We are unique as humans. We're formulated to think and derive different components differently and analyze the world independently. And when you find people that make you click and help you reason with yourself, help you pursue that kind of happiness more fiercely and more attractively than anything you've ever experienced, know that those people are keepers. You know that they're going to help you keep the fire going inside your soul, because too many people are burning up. Too many people are sort of trying to formulate dreams, and the world's getting more competitive. It's an interesting time where people are just struggling, and with something as simple as income. You know, it's important that if you want to be a successful businessman, then you know that, like, part of it is going to be weighing up the the cost that you're going to have to put in from giving what you're taking away from your family as to what you're putting into success, because the world is more difficult. It's becoming more competitive. Hours, you know, to get the same return, you just have to put in more work. It's exactly the same with the music side. You know, I found out it's like you can be brilliant, but you can be an unknown for a long time. Luck plays a big part of it, but then again, you know, luck is almost like the universe's way of saying, you know, like, appreciate what you've been doing, and they reward you for it. But I'm just, every time I pick up the paper, I see, like, you know, this Hollywood sort of stars, you know, they go crazy because they sort of this influx of fame and fortune too quickly, and I never want to be like that. I just want to appreciate the simple things and appreciate friends. And yeah, if there's any, I mean, the last bit of advice, not that I'm capable of giving advice, is I'm just sort of someone who's on this path that's just work out what happiness really is to you, and find the purest, most organic form of it that isn't sugar coated. Sugar-coated happiness is very temporary. Find the stuff that makes you a better person in the long run, and makes others that you care about. And that you think if every single person in the world adopted the similar strategy to you, then the world would be a better place. That's about it.
Well, thanks so much.
Pleasure, man. Thanks
for your time, Blair.
Thanks for being a good friend, and thank you, man.
And
all the best for the vlog.
We wish you all the best as well, bud.
Thanks, my friend.
Cheers, bud.